Hey everybody, Arnaldo here, broadcasting from Fidelio's Frequency. Welcome to my channel. I should say welcome back because it has been quite a while since I haven't posted any new content, any new videos. The reason being I was on vacation, personal time off, as well as time off from YouTube, I'd have to say. During that time, I was in Europe. I visited 3 countries, different cities, and spent time with family and friends. And I also visited quite a few record stores. And in upcoming videos on my channel, I'll talk about the record stores, the cities that I visited, and I'll show you also what I picked up in those, let's call them shopping sprees in other countries. But the topic of today's video, as you probably saw from the thumbnail, as well as the image behind me and the title of the video, today we'll be talking about Michael Jackson's Dangerous. And upon my return in the mailbox, or I should say figuratively in the mailbox, was a delivery from Music Direct, the parent company of Mobile Fidelity. And we'll be talking about Michael Jackson's Dangerous, reissued just recently by Mobile Fidelity. And I took that opportunity to pull out all the other copies that I have of this album and to do a mini shootout and give you my impression, my opinion of how they sound. So in addition to the MoFi, we'll be talking about the original 1991 version on vinyl, as well as the 2015 remaster. And I took the opportunity to pull out, has been a while since I hadn't listened to it, my original copy on CD that came out in 1991 in this really cool collector's edition. So we'll be talking about all of these different versions of Michael Jackson's Dangerous right after the intro. Dangerous is Michael Jackson's 8th studio album. It was released in 1991, 4 years after the previous album, which was Bad. And Dangerous is a huge commercial success for Michael Jackson. By 1994, it had sold 24 million copies. I think to date, it has sold 32 million copies. But I think it's also an artistic success. I find it has aged better, in my opinion, compared to Bad. But more importantly, Michael Jackson is venturing into new sounds, new production styles, new genres, slightly different genres than the previous albums. No longer produced by Quincy Jones, who had produced, I think, his last 3 or 4 albums. I think 3 albums. Off the Wall, Thriller, and Bad. This time around, Michael Jackson recruits Teddy Riley and Bill Bottrell, and sometimes also the producer Bruce Swedien, who's actually also a recording engineer, gets producer credit on this album. I lost count of how many singles were taken from this album. Just to name a few: Black or White, Remember the Time, Jam, In the Closet, Heal the World, of course, Will You Be There. Probably there's a few more that I'm missing, but definitely one of my favorite Michael Jackson albums, and I think probably one that has aged very well. I guess we'll start off with the one that I'm holding in my hand. This is the original 1991 pressing. I've only acquired this within the last year. I had been searching for a good near mint copy, and I was lucky enough to find one at a record fair recently. And I have to say that I really, really enjoyed it because it was, let's call it the first copy I had on vinyl of this album, and it delivers. Nice bass, really good top end. I will say that at some point, in some spots, in some songs, it does have a little bit of sibilance, namely in some of the vocals, but overall, I think it's well balanced and really nice sound presentation, which leads me to also bring up the 1991 version on CD. So let's take a look at the 1991 version, which in my opinion is probably, from a physical packaging standpoint, probably the nicest version in my opinion. Yeah, it's a CD, but they did a wonderful job. This actually is called, if you can see it here, the Collector's Edition. And I don't know how collectible it is, haven't looked for it, but I think it was tens of thousands of copies of this special collector's edition were made at the time. And it's very interesting because it's in like this book format. And when you open it, it reveals a pop-up image, 3D pop-up image of the album artwork. And I find it just simply beautiful. Was really well executed. And in the front tray, you have the CD. It was a gold plated CD, and underneath, and let's see if I don't drop anything or break anything, it reveals the booklet lodged in there. And let me show you very briefly the gold CD, which is actually nicely also designed. So pretty cool there. But let's talk about how it sounds. At the time, this is the only copy I had when it came out in 1991, and I found that it just blew me away. How punchy, how detailed all of the sound was, and you could crank this up and it sounded fantastic. Now that I listen to it, it doesn't sound as fantastic as it did back in 1991, not because it's aged, but because maybe my ear has changed a little bit. My taste has changed. I'm comparing it to the vinyl copies. I did notice that the CD sounds a little metallic, in the sense that it is it's very boosted on the top end. I don't want to call it boosted, but it's really very, very bright, like some people like to call it, to the point where there's bass, but I think the top end really is predominant on this pressing. Sometimes I think that I found that if you listen to it at a high volume now, for me it's a little fatiguing on the ears. So I wouldn't call it a very smooth listen. It bites quite a bit. Maybe bites a little too much if you want to put it into perspective. At the time, I loved it. Now, I don't know if it's been remastered. I'm sure it did get remastered because these CDs have been reissued quite a few times. If they've improved upon it, I do have a later reissue, probably around the 2000s. For time reasons, I didn't pull it out, but this version, in my opinion, is good. It doesn't sound bad, but I just love it for the physical packaging, like the presentation. And now let's talk a little bit about the 2015 version. Now, the 2015 version was originally issued by Music on Vinyl. I don't know the source of what type of tapes they use. I don't know if they were using transfers. I don't know if it was remastered. The credits still say that it was mastered by Bernie Grundman. And just a little footnote, Bernie Grundman, I believe, mastered all of Michael Jackson's albums starting from Off the Wall. And this version, the 2015, I don't know if it's currently in print. I only bought it maybe 5 years ago. And to be honest, I kept it sealed on the shelf because I was listening to other copies of it on CD or streaming it. So I finally opened it and gave it a listen. I have to say that compared to the original version, it sounds different. I want to say it sounds a little like the sound presentation is flat. It's not very dynamic in terms of space, in terms of soundstage. But I have to say it's balanced. Not as bright as the original CD, but not as balanced as the original 1991 pressing on vinyl. If I would have to say it's a bad copy, if I didn't have anything else, I would say I would be perfectly happy with it. But in my opinion, if you happen to be able to get an original copy of the 1991 pressing on vinyl, definitely, this is, in my opinion, a better presentation. Yes, I mentioned earlier, it is a little bit sibilant, but it has a better presentation of the music. And now we can finally talk about the Mobile Fidelity version, which is probably the reason why all of you or most of you tuned in to this video. I left it for last because I want to talk a little bit more at length about it. And first of all, I find that the presentation in terms of the physical packaging is probably the best of the vinyl versions. I don't know if you could see it here, but the MoFi edition, it's just the reproduction of the image is absolutely spectacular in terms of the color reproduction. If you look at the original, it looks a little on the yellowish side. If you compare them side by side, maybe you can, maybe not tell the difference. And compared to the 2015 version, which was kind of saturated, super saturated, and more on the red tones compared here, you can probably notice that even more. I find that this version of by MoFi is absolutely perfect. I think this is the perfect balance of all the colors of the album cover. But more importantly, MoFi did a great job in making this a gatefold. So I guess they don't have that many images left to use from this artwork session. It's a gatefold, but we're really not getting much in terms of a gatefold. Again, a reproduction of the eyes, a portion of the cover, and then just text. But they tried, right? They tried to their best. And I think they did an excellent job with the physical presentation of the package. Nice, sturdy, tip-on, thick cardboard. Excellent when it comes to that. And more importantly, whereas the original and the reissue had inner sleeves, which I will show you. The inner sleeves were quite thin on the original, and they had most of the text, the credits, on very thin sleeves. The reissue that came out in 2015 had the same pretty much graphics of the inner sleeves, but definitely much thicker sleeves. The MoFi edition, I think, uses to their advantage the fact that they have polyline sleeves for as inner sleeves, and you can see that here, the custom MoFi sleeves, which I left. And instead of the Epic logo or label, they customized it with black, which I think really adds or is in the same spirit of the artwork, which is mostly black. But the MoFi also gives you a booklet in which they reproduce the inner sleeves, and I think that was a very smart choice. And we see it here, nicely reproduced, same exact credits and text on both. I do want to mention that when it comes to the vinyl quality, the pressing quality of the Mobile Fidelity version, it is probably the best one of the three that I listened to. It is flat, quiet. Of course, it's 180 gram. So kudos to Mobile Fidelity and their new pressing plant, Fidelity Pressings, on really a flawless vinyl pressing. So you want to hear it? You want to know my thoughts on how the MoFi sounds? So I purposely had not been listening to this album for quite a while. Like I said, the 1991 original I got it within the last year, and I put it on at the time and listened to it twice. Sounded great, loved it. I put this on, and immediately the things that I noticed most of all is the bass. If I turned it up, I'm sure my windows would be rattling and my neighbors would be complaining. The bottom end, the bass, is kind of like out of this world. It's three-dimensional, if you can call it like that. Yeah, that's what I noticed. That's the first thing that jumps out. Then as I was listening, I was hearing some details that I never really noticed on the previous copies. And then in switching back and forth, I was reminded, oh yeah, now I hear it also on the original. But I want to say that maybe some of the details are a little bit more enhanced on the MoFi. Clearer, a little bit more clarity on the separation of the instruments. But I do notice that the soundstage is a little deeper. I think you can feel the room on the MoFi. So everything is great up until now. The final point that I noticed, I almost wanted, my amplifier does not have any tone controls. I can't turn up the treble, and I was missing it. For years, I heard the very metallic version of the CD originally. That is what was in my mind. I could tell the sounds of like the higher sound, the higher frequency sounds were very accentuated on the 91 CD. I heard them also on the 91 vinyl, a little bit brought down, not as metallic. I think they're totally rolled off on the MoFi, and personally, I miss it. You turn it up, you can hear them a little bit better, but why would I have to turn it up? Because then even the bass is overblown if I'm listening to it at a higher volume. I noticed that because of that, higher frequencies, some of the vocals seem also a little rolled off. Definitely all of those S's, all of those background voices. Michael Jackson had a very high register voice, and I think it suffers a little bit when it's missing a little bit of the top end. But not only that, there are other instruments that suffer a little bit from the lack of top end. I don't know if it's just my system. I hear the top end on the other copies that I listen to. I don't hear it on the MoFi, possibly because the bass overtakes it, overshadows the lack or the attenuated top end. I thought it was going to be perfect. I have quite a few Mobile Fidelity versions, one steps, just regular MoFis. I've never really had an issue with the top end being rolled off. So for me, I was a little disappointed. If I'd have to say, I want my money back, I probably would have second thoughts about buying it, but I was so gung-ho. I thought it was going to be a slam dunk because it's perfect for MoFi. It's the perfect album that you would think MoFi would do, without any problem. I liked the Thriller that MoFi put out, the one step. I did not get the off the wall that was on double 45. I think it was also a one step. I heard great things about that. Probably most people preferred the off the wall, the job that MoFi did with off the wall, more so than with Thriller. I read a couple of comments on Discogs about people noticing the same thing that I was noticing, that the top end is rolled off. There's a little bit, the higher frequencies have been pulled back a little bit. And it's a shame. I didn't know, I discovered it only when I read about the specs of the MoFi, that this, apart from a few tracks, were originally recorded on analog tape. This is Michael Jackson doing a total 180 from the previous album, Bad, which was, I think, an entirely digital recording. So I think the groundwork was there. There was potential for this album on MoFi to be a slam dunk, and I think it's kind of like a missed opportunity. What are my final thoughts? And again, this is just my taste, it's my ears, it's my system, and my thoughts are, I don't know if I'll be keeping this. There are some qualities that I really enjoy of the MoFi. I enjoy the soundstage. I enjoy sometimes the 3D quality of it. I enjoy the bass, even though sometimes I feel it's maybe a tad too much. I think I'll be going back to my original 1991 pressing more often than I would go back and listen to the MoFi. I think although the 1991 vinyl is not perfect, I reiterate, in some instances it was a little sibilant. I prefer it over the 2015 remaster, and I definitely prefer it over the MoFi. So those are just my thoughts. If you have a copy of the 91, if you have a copy of the 2015, and you've gotten also the Mobile Fidelity, please leave your comments. I'd like to know what your feedback is. Maybe it's my ears, or maybe it's my system, or maybe my room setup. But those are my thoughts, and I hope you take all of this with a grain of salt. Before we conclude this video, I wanted to thank everyone for keeping up with the channel, even though I've been gone for a month. Please stay tuned. There'll be more videos coming about my shopping sprees in London, Amsterdam, and Italy. And I wanted to thank you so much for watching this video, for tuning in once again. Please hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe as well. It's just that little button there with a subscription notice. And that's all for today. Thank you again so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.